The person you are when you're drunk isn't fake, and the person you are sober isn't boring. But here's what almost no one tells you. When you completely quit alcohol, you don't just get healthier, you become a different person. Not metaphorically, neurologically. And for the first few months, you won't recognize yourself. You might not even like yourself. But what emerges on the other side is someone your drunk brain could never have predicted. If you've ever wondered what actually happens to your personality when alcohol leaves your system completely, not just the health benefits, but who you become, this is that explanation. We treat alcohol like it's just a beverage choice, a social lubricant, something you can take or leave. But neuroscience reveals something most people never consider. Alcohol fundamentally alters your brain chemistry in ways that reshape your personality. And when you remove it completely, your brain doesn't reset to baseline. It rebuilds itself, different. This isn't a sobriety sermon. This is psychology. Today, I'm walking you through what actually happens month by month, the neuroscience behind it, and why the person you become at 6 months sober has almost nothing in common with who you were at week 1. What alcohol actually does to your personality. Let's start with what's happening while you're still drinking. Alcohol works by hijacking 4 major neurochemical systems simultaneously. First, GABA, your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, the thing that calms you down. Alcohol artificially amplifies GABA activity, why you feel relaxed, why anxiety drops, why you stop overthinking. But here's what most people don't realize. Your brain compensates. When you flood the system with artificial GABA enhancement repeatedly, your brain downregulates its own natural production. It assumes it doesn't need to make as much. The version of you that feels calm and social with alcohol is chemically different from the version of you without it. You're not revealing your real personality when you drink. You're creating a temporary one. Second system, dopamine. Alcohol spikes dopamine massively, about double what you'd get from sex, quadruple what you'd get from a good meal. Your reward system learns alcohol equals massive reward. Over time, dopamine receptors downregulate. Normal activities that used to feel rewarding, conversation, hobbies, a quiet morning, start feeling boring, flat. You need the spike to feel normal. Third, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, impulse control, seeing long-term consequences. Alcohol suppresses it. Drunk you makes decisions sober you has to deal with. You say things you don't mean. You wake up thinking, why did I do that? You didn't lose control. The part of your brain that executes control was chemically offline. Fourth, your stress system, the HPA axis. Alcohol initially suppresses cortisol, your stress hormone, which is why it feels like it helps you relax after a hard day. But chronic drinking dysregulates the entire system. Your baseline stress sensitivity goes up. You need alcohol to feel calm, which means you're not actually calm. You're dependent. Think about that moment at a party when you don't have a drink in your hand and suddenly you don't know what to do with your arms. You feel exposed. That's not shyness. That's your GABA system in deficit, screaming for the chemical it's learned to expect. If you use alcohol to relax, if you need it to be social, if you genuinely believe you're more fun when you drink, hit like. Not because I'm judging you, but because what comes next is going to reframe everything you thought you knew about your own personality. The first 3 months, worse before better. So what happens when you remove alcohol completely? Your brain doesn't return to baseline. It goes through withdrawal. Not just physical, neurological. Week 1 and 2, your GABA system is in freefall. You've been artificially enhancing it. Your brain stopped making enough on its own. Now there's nothing. Result, anxiety spikes. Sleep gets worse, not better. You feel irritable, on edge, like your nervous system is raw. This is the phase where most people quit quitting, because they think this is who I am, sober, anxious, and miserable. That's not sobriety, that's withdrawal. Month 1, the fog. Your dopamine receptors are still down-regulated. Nothing feels good. You go to a party sober, it's boring. You try a hobby, it feels pointless. You talk to people, there's no spark. This is called anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. And here's the brutal part. You start thinking the drunk version of you was the real version, because at least that person felt something. What's actually happening is your brain is recalibrating, learning to produce its own neurochemicals again, and that takes time. Month 2 and 3, the glimpses. You'll have moments, brief, unexpected, where something feels good without alcohol, a conversation that actually lands, a morning where you wake up with energy, a night where you sleep deeply. These are signs your GABA system is starting to recover. Your dopamine receptors are upregulating, but it's inconsistent. Some days you feel like yourself, some days you feel like a stranger. This is where the personality shift becomes undeniable. Month 4 to 12. Who are you becoming? Around month 4 to 6, something strange happens. You start noticing, I don't want the same things anymore. The friends you used to love hanging out with, you can't stand them sober. Not because you're judgmental, but because you realize we had nothing in common except drinking. The parties you thought you enjoyed, you see them clearly now. Loud, shallow, repetitive. The version of you that tolerated all of this needed alcohol to tolerate it. Here's an interesting pattern. Almost 3/4 of people who quit drinking discover their hobbies completely change within 6 months. And this isn't because they're trying to reinvent themselves. Their reward system has literally rebuilt itself. Things that used to feel boring, reading, hiking, creating something, suddenly feel engaging. Your dopamine receptors are functioning again. And things that used to feel fun, chaos, overstimulation, surface-level socializing, now feel exhausting. Your brain has reorganized what it considers rewarding. You're not the same person. By month 6, something remarkable happens. Most people report, I don't recognize my old self. Their values shift. What used to matter, being seen as fun, being liked by everyone, avoiding conflict, stops mattering. What starts mattering, depth, authenticity, time alone, boundaries. This isn't a moral upgrade, it's neurological. Your prefrontal cortex has recovered. You can see long-term consequences again. You can delay gratification. You can say no. And the person who emerges is someone you've never met before, not the drunk version, not the anxious early sober version, a third person. One who was always there, but chemically inaccessible. What alcohol was actually doing. Here's the realization that hits around month 9 to 12. You look back and you think, I wasn't using alcohol to have fun. I was using it to tolerate a life I didn't actually want. The job I hated, alcohol made it bearable. The relationship that wasn't working, alcohol smoothed it over. The friendships that were surface level, alcohol made them feel deep. Alcohol didn't enhance your life, it made a mediocre life tolerable. And when you remove it, you're forced to confront that. Our brains evolved in environments without access to concentrated chemical rewards like this. Alcohol hijacks those ancient systems, the same way sugar hijacks your metabolism, the same way social media hijacks your attention. The version of you that feels like you can't socialize, can't relax, can't have fun without it, that's not your personality. That's dependency mistaken for identity. The person you become after a year sober isn't better or worse than who you were. They're just unfiltered. And most people who get there say the same thing. I can't believe I thought drunk me was the real me. The cost nobody talks about. I want to be honest about something. Not everyone who quits drinking ends up happier, because some people discover I was using alcohol to avoid dealing with trauma, with anxiety, with depression, and when the numbing agent is gone,
those things surface. Sobriety doesn't fix you, it reveals you. And what it reveals isn't always comfortable. Some people realize their entire social life was built around drinking, and when they stop, they have no one. Some realize their relationship only worked because both people were drunk half the time. Some realize they don't actually know who they are because they've been performing a chemically altered version of themselves for years. The loneliest phase is usually month 2 to 4, after the initial motivation fades, before the new identity forms. You're in between selves, and neither one feels like home. But here's what happens to people who push through. Those who make it past 6 months almost never go back. Not because their life is perfect, but because they've met the person they actually are, and they don't want to lose that again. Your personality without alcohol isn't boring, it's just selective. The drunk version of you tolerated everyone. The sober version realizes most people aren't worth your energy. The drunk version needed constant stimulation. The sober version finds depth in silence. The drunk version performed confidence. The sober version built it. Alcohol didn't make you fun. It made you tolerate things that weren't. And the person you become without it isn't who you were before you started drinking. It's who you would have been if you'd never needed it in the first place. If this shifted something, subscribe. The next video might land exactly when you need it. And tell me in the comments, have you quit drinking or are you thinking about it? What's the one thing that scares you most about who you might become? I read every comment. See you next time.